So, you know, in looking at your website there on the information section, you mentioned that race is an important aspect of individual and group identity. Would you consider yourself a racist by common definition?
Well, I don't know what the definition of racist these days is. Practically anyone who disagrees with a black or Hispanic these days can be called a racist. But whatever a racist is, it's someone with an immoral view or a disreputable position. My views on race are...
Hang on a second, Jared. I got a commercial. We'll be right back, folks, with more Frankly Speaking Radio. Stay with us. Sorry for the interruption there. Please go ahead, sir. You were just talking about the definition of racist versus what you believe.
Yes, this is an important question. These days, anyone who, for example, points out empirical obvious facts, let's say the fact that blacks are on a per capita basis about 10 times more likely to commit murder or mugging than whites. If you simply point that out, it's a verifiable fact. There are certain people who will accuse you of racism simply for pointing that out. Or if I pointed out to a number of radio audiences on Martin Luther King Day, if you say that, no, Martin Luther King does not deserve the highest honor a nation can give. He does not deserve to have his birthday made into a national holiday. If you express that's not an empirical fact, it's an opinion. It's an opinion that you can justify in all sorts of ways, but simply by expressing an opinion that offends certain minorities. Just by doing that, you can be called a racist. So, doing all sorts of perfectly normal things can bring about a charge of racism. I reject such charges completely. My views on race are very carefully considered, and I would defend them with absolute confidence as being entirely natural and completely moral.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, obviously, and I agree with you to a certain extent that I do think that we are in this, we have sort of gone down the political correctness line way too far, to the point where myself, I've come out and said that I think that slavery reparations is a horrible idea for a number of reasons, primarily, of course, because you get that paycheck, that doesn't justify what was done. And by accepting that money, I think you're saying, hey, everything's okay now. Secondly, the particulars of it just seem to be impossible to work out. So, but by saying that, I was accused of being a racist.
Of course.
You know, coming out and reading stories from the mainstream media in which Ariel Sharon says we control America, you take a good look at all of our elected representatives and where they get paid, and you can certainly see that Israel plays a predominant role in our policy making. I can be called an anti-Semite. Being against illegal immigration, regardless of where they come from, I can be called a racist. So,
That's right.
you know, I agree with you on that regard. But I mean, some of these comments, they are pretty inflammatory. I mean, how do you rationalize? How do you justify this? I mean, I know you said that you can, you know, make your case. I would like to hear it just to get that very important question, as you stated, out of the way.
Oh, you mean the comment that race is an important aspect of individual or national identity?
Yes.
Oh, well, I think that's a quite empirically verifiable fact, too. It would be impossible to find a multiracial country where there is not racial division. In fact, we can find it very obviously in the United States today. All across the country, people are trying very hard to promote integration. In schools, for example. And children can be assigned in class to sit next to people of a different race. Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, whites, they have them all sit next to each other. However, the one thing that no school seems to be able to achieve is lunchroom integration. That is to say, when the students are left to themselves, when they choose where they sit among people like themselves. That is a practically universal phenomenon. Likewise, on college campuses, you have organizations that represent people of different races and different groups. You have Hispanic student associations. You have black student associations. You have the same thing in professional organizations. There is no large police force or firefighting force in the country that does not have its Black Officers Association or Black Firefighters Association. Likewise, in Congress, you have a black congressional caucus, a Hispanic congressional caucus. Their race, their ethnicity, these are hugely important to them in terms of who they are and who they feel they represent. It's an obvious fact in that respect. And so both individually and as a group, race plays a very important role. We are a species that is simply tribal. We have limited loyalties and limited identifications. When people talk about the brotherhood of man, that's a bunch of moonshine. Nobody considers all of humanity his brothers. And we have these limited, very strong loyalties to people who are like ourselves. It's simply part of human nature. And to attempt to build a society in a way that denies that aspect of human nature, I think, is to set ourselves up for terrible failure.